I can tell you it's a real pleasure seeing this Spanish and Portuguese organization growing. I'm already with Red Hat since 2003. You have seen in the video kind of the real business in Iberia started in 2007. So I had the honor and pleasure to follow it all the time. So it's just really, really great to see. But let's switch to, it's a nice picture. And many, many years back, before we even all knew that it was possible to travel to space and send people up, into space, actually, science fiction writers were already writing about it. They were writing about it, that people can, travel to space. And these science fiction writers, these authors, they actually inspired scientists and explorers to start dreaming. So people were starting dreaming about building rockets, going to space, okay? So really they were starting dreaming. And when you look back in history, every great achievement at the end starts with a bold goal. And most of bold goals actually had as a basis dreamers. People were dreaming about things. So, and when people dream about things and then they set themselves goals, they very often, they appear like unachievable. But what is very important, when you have unachievable goals, they have people who believe in it and they're pretty much still saying, we at the end can really achieve this. When you go back in this space time, people like Yuri Gagarin, who wanted to be the first in orbit. He was willing to risk his life. JFK said, we want to be the first nation on the moon. Both of them had whole nations cheering them up, being behind them, okay? They set really bold goals which appeared really absolutely unachievable. Then, what do you need to achieve a really, really bold goal? Just having a goal is probably not enough, especially if you want to go to space. You put yourself into a metal container filled up with explosive fuel, and then you shoot yourself up in the sky. Just having a goal is maybe not good enough. So you for sure one thing you need is good technology, okay? A bold goal requires inventive technology, which is actually very, very important. When we look at technology, then obviously we didn't arrive at the space stations all at once. Started very small with one component after the other, and one technology did build on the other, okay? So obviously we started with transistors. Transistors gave us, electronic computers. These electronic computers gave us suddenly control over rockets, over satellites, over whole space stations, okay? So everything was built up and everything is at the end completely connected. So you first need technology to make this happen. And the second thing to make a bold goal happen is people. Because without people, nothing happens. And again, in a case like this, you need people who are willing to bet their career on something. You need people who are willing to even risk their lives to achieve something and really believe in it despite all obstacles. Because there's many people who have seen that's never be possible. Okay? So I think it's very, very important. And we have seen it is at the end, possible. When you look at the space race, first everybody was competing. Who is first? The Russians and the Americans, investing billions of dollars, trying to be there. And at every step of the competition, at the end, also they realized it is actually much, much better to collaborate. And probably some of you still remember the famous handshake in space, when then suddenly collaboration between different nations and space agencies happened, because it's much better to collaborate than to compete. Okay? Today we have like 5 space agencies, collaborating with astronauts from over 20 nations in this program. And I compare this a little bit with like Microsoft and Red Hat. We were competing over decades, and then we also realized actually it's better to work together. Okay, when you see it the last couple of years, how also the industry is collaborating in a much, much better way, and how open source was driving this, because it's better if we work together in a collaborative way. If you share a problem, you solve problems much, much faster, okay? But switching to Red Hat, we never had goals to be in the sky, and go to the stars. But we clearly set out our goals. We wanted to change an industry. We absolutely wanted to change an industry, and for this, we did set for ourselves different bold goals. But what do we do actually at Red Hat? At the end, we set bold goals, help foster technology innovation, and collaborate. Now, it's very important with passionate people to make things happen. Very, very important, as always, is here the people factor. So what has been our first bold goal? Actually, many, many years back, we wanted to make Linux the enterprise standard. Why? The world was getting more and more complex, and it was requirement that more and more innovation is happening. And if you want to innovate, you also need to have like a good common base, okay, which you can stand on. Have a good common base, which can be easily managed and can be easily integrated to then add innovation on top of it. So that's why we set the bold goal. This common base, Linux must become this common base. When you look today, there's a very interesting chart. When you look at just at the yellow line and the red line, the red line is the Linux line. Until 2016, the use of Linux kind of in development environments or for developers was around 20% constant all the years. And then suddenly it is exploding. In the meantime, it's way over 2/3 of all development is happening on Linux. What happened in 2016? That's when cloud-native app development truly kicked in. And cloud-native app development is happening close to 100% on Linux. And that's where you then see the big pickup and the decline on the Windows side. So Linux is pretty much became the default standard, which clearly is here confirmed through this statistic. From a Red Hat perspective, back in 2002, we launched our first enterprise product. It was called Red Hat Enterprise Linux 2.1, because we were very bold. It was not a 1.0 version. Okay, because when you come out with a 1.0 version and you want to compete with back then the Unix systems, around security, scalability, performance, it's better to start with the 2.1. Okay, so we came up with 2.1, and I think we have been very successful. 17 years later, that's where we are today. We had version 8, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux version 8 is the foundation for many, many organizations also here, really running and operating the hybrid cloud environments, which I think is very, very important. We're running hospitals, banks, insurance companies, air traffic control systems, weapon systems, whatever you can imagine is powered by Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Our next goal we set out was make open hybrid cloud the default architecture. Today, everybody talks about hybrid multi-cloud. Everybody. Every analyst, every company, every supplier. We set this goal 6 years ago to ourselves. Not last year, 6 years ago. We knew the world will become hybrid with the solutions kind of on-premise, off-premise, in multiple public clouds, on different footprints also, on-premise with legacy workloads, with cloud-native workloads. And we started back then to pretty much design our products with always this in mind, to help customers survive and live in this hybrid multi-cloud world in the best way. And like I said, we didn't start with this yesterday. We started with this over 6 years ago when we set this bold goal ourselves. And today, it's a clear reality. When you look at this architecture, what will not change and hasn't changed is you will have these different, what we call footprints. You will have workloads running in traditional bare metal machines, because out of several reasons, latency or performance reasons. You will have still a lot of applications running in a traditional virtualized environments, be it on VMware, be it on Microsoft, be it on our own technology. You will have solutions running in a private cloud, be it on OpenStack, be it on VMware, be it on Microsoft technology, whatever your private cloud environment is. And you will have workloads running in public clouds. And very important, not one public cloud, multiple public clouds. Why multiple public clouds? Because not every public cloud is good in everything. Not every single public cloud has a data center in every single country to maybe serve the latency requirements. Plus, obviously, you don't want to put all eggs in one basket, also from there avoiding potential lock-in and dependency. So it's a hybrid and multi-cloud environment which is here to stay, okay? And we want to ensure that you have a choice and you can operate in this world in the right way. And that's why we are convinced about this architecture. And the good news is now, from a technology perspective, containers came into play, and containers kind of are a key technology to solve this problem of all the portability, the interoperability in these different environments. So when you look at the Red Hat environment, that's how we're saying you need a common base where obviously Red Hat Enterprise Linux becomes your kind of your common denominator over these different infrastructure footprints. And then very important, your container platform, which becomes kind of an abstraction layer on top, which is in our case is OpenShift, pretty much sits on top of it. Completely isolates the complexity of whatever thing is underneath, meaning the applications, okay, don't even know. Are they running on a VMware virtualized server, whatever, in your private data center? Are they running on AWS in the cloud or wherever it is? Or do they run maybe even bare metal somewhere? Okay? And this abstraction layer, which clearly is a horizontal abstraction layer, that is, I think, is the important point to not getting locked in and provide this flexibility so that the developers can do what they're best. They develop applications, develop them in a microservice architecture, stick them into a container, and manage them with an orchestration tool. And there again, Kubernetes from a technology perspective, pretty much to be the default container platform and orchestration tool. We as Red Hat, we made a bet 5 years ago that Kubernetes will be the technology. You can now say it is luck or not luck or foresight, but we made this bet. And that's what OpenShift is designed on, and that's why we're also now leading in this space, because it became the default standard, and everybody is now, is behind this technology. Many companies here in Spain, be it BBVA, be it Santander, be it Telefonica, be it Cepsa, be it whatever companies like BMW, Volkswagen, Barclays, HSBC, and so on, all fully endorsing this architecture and using our technology for this. So I think it's very, very powerful. If you keep going, what's the next big thing? We absolutely want to extend the data center to the hybrid edge. We all want to have autonomous cars, autonomous driving. If we want to have this, we need something really working in also on the edge. There we're working a lot, especially with the telcos, to improve. How can things now also? How can you keep control when you have workloads on the edge? Because on the edge, obviously, it's even more complex because you have even billions of devices when you think about all the IoT devices, and you must keep control. And important, you can keep control. So we put a lot of focus on how can we also now improve further our technology to serve these edge use cases and help you managing this complete environment. Because the big difference is there with the edge, you need to process the data where it is, at the source. There are use cases where you just don't have the luxury to send whatever the data back to a central data center, process it, and return it. It's just not, this latency just doesn't allow it, or the latency doesn't allow it. So you need to process data at the source, and that's why we're investing a lot of money to make this, again, a possibility. What's our kind of last and foremost kind of bold goal? And Julia talked a little bit about it. Bring Red Hat and open source to the entire universe. What do we mean with this? From a technology perspective, open source is already close to everywhere. Okay? But what is also now we are seeing is that the principles of open source communities make it into our day-to-day lives, make it into how you run an organization, how you run a business. Julia talked about a principle like of meritocracy. Okay? The best idea wins. It's not the hierarchy. For example, if you're a boss at Red Hat, you have to get used to that the people are not doing what you say. Okay? That's just what it is. Usually people do what you say when they think it makes sense what you say. But if this doesn't make sense what you say, then they just do something else. Okay? Or they tell you it doesn't make sense. Okay? That's the way how an open organization works, and that's why also you really unlock the power of the people. Okay? By truly living these principles. That's why we're saying we want to see open source, not just succeed from a technology perspective, but also the open source principles be pervasive throughout our lives and throughout the organization. And especially when you look at open source, where is the technology innovation happening today? All technology innovation is happening in these open source communities. If we talk about cloud, if we talk about machine learning, if we talk about artificial intelligence, if we talk about big data, whatever, all the innovation is happening in these open source communities. And a big acceleration for this was also with all the big Web 2.0 companies. If you take Google and Facebook and the others, because they don't monetize software, all the software they develop they also open source and develop an open source community because they have a different monetization method, and they're not selling software like other software companies, and which gave a big boost to this innovation engine of the open source communities. We at Red Hat, we 100% live in this. When you look at our products, which you all know, 100% of our products get developed this way. We have around 7,000 developers, and these 7,000 developers work 100% in these open source communities. Everything we do is also upstream, okay? Obviously, we started with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and then you know all the other products which all come out of the open source communities, and whatever we do goes back into there. Always very important to keep in mind, the single only thing which belongs to us as Red Hat in our products is this nice logo. All the rest is open source. The logo belongs to us, that's ours, okay? So you're not allowed to use our brand, okay, for your success. But this is the only thing which belongs to us. All the rest is 100% open source. Why are we doing this? Because we are convinced that's the better way to produce better products. And at the end, we don't sell zeros and ones. We sell pretty much, at the end, enterprise solutions. We build an ecosystem, we make certification, we make it scalable, we make a long-term life cycle around it. So we make the open source technology consumable for you as enterprise customers. That's at the end our business model. I mean, now look at the big goals which I set out. I'm absolutely convinced that we actually will get there. And the way we get there is together and the open source way. Thank you very much. Enjoy the show and the conference.